Hey, everybody, and welcome to part 5 of my n8n Masterclass, where we take you from someone who has no idea what's going on inside of n8n and turn you into somebody who can actually make sophisticated AI agents and even sell them. Now, if you remember in part 4, we dove into sub agents, right? We built our own content agent in an entirely different workflow and had these two AI agents talk to one another. Well, in part 5, we're going to be stepping up our game a little bit and going into RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And I'm really excited about this one because I think RAG is one of the most important tools that you need to wrap your head around if you really want to build robust AI agents. As someone who actually builds and sells AI agents for a living, RAG agents are the most popular AI workflow that I sell, and I would argue it actually brings people the most value. So here's the most recent RAG agent that I sold to a client. I actually gave it to him last week, ended up selling it for $5,000. And you can check out one of my previous videos for a full deep dive of how this works and how to set it up yourself. And obviously, I even give away the template for free. But I wanted to show this so we can kind of talk about what RAG actually is and what we need to do to create it. Because we're just going to create a very simple version for today, right? Like we're all about the basics, all about the fundamentals in this video series. And we need to understand how it works at a very base level before we can upgrade and start doing some varsity stuff like this. So first things first, what is RAG? Retrieval Augmented Generation. Now, when you talk to ChatGPT, what information is it using to answer your questions? Well, it's relying on its training data, right? It's been trained on millions and millions and millions and millions, trillions of parameters to answer your questions. But what if I wanted to answer questions that are specific about me or my team or the project I'm working on? What would you do? Well, you would go ahead and you would dump some files into it, right? Like you would put in an Excel file, you would put in a PDF, you would give it documents for it to answer questions about. That is essentially a very simplistic version of RAG. So RAG means it's going to retrieve a document from some sort of database. It's going to augment its answer based on the documentation, and then it's going to generate an answer for you. RAG. Now, in this one you're looking at, the database it goes to is living inside a Supabase. And the type of database that's being used is a vector database. Now, I'm not going to go super in deep into vector databases and all the math behind it and high dimensional stuff. Just think of it as a special database that AIs and large language models love because it's easy for them to grab information from there. That's all you really need to understand. Now, the other part you need to understand is how do we get documents from wherever they are, whether that's a Google Drive or on your computer, into a vector database that the large language model that our AI agent can actually use? Well, you need some sort of ingestion system, and that's what you see going on here in the red. Now, the long story short of this is we start inside of a Google Drive. These documents then get tagged, they get a bunch of metadata sent to them, we extract the text, and then it's put into our vector database. Now, one thing of note when going inside a vector database, the way it works is imagine I had a 100-page PDF. When it goes into the database, it doesn't sit there as a 100-page document, right? That would be a lot of text for it to constantly go through to find the answer. Instead, what happens is it gets chunked, and you kind of can see that here at the bottom with the character text splitter. Basically, every 500, 750, 1,000 characters, that document gets chunked up into little bite-sized pieces that then all go into the vector database. And because it's in small pieces, it's easier and it's quicker for the AI to be able to find the text we need to answer our question. So it's a speed thing. So that is something you need to know because it does have its pros and cons, right? On one hand, we get speed, but sometimes it gives us a loss of accuracy, right? You can start thinking about, well, how is it going to know the right answer if I shove a giant Excel file into there that's thousands of rows and hundreds of columns? Like if it's chunked up, how does it actually have context for everything? Great question. And you are just starting to get into the deep waters that is RAG and some of the intricacies with it. But for today, we're just going to stick with the basics, which is just like Google Docs and PDFs and putting information into a database and then having AI retrieve it, right? Once you get your hands on that, then you can start trying to do some high level stuff with like large Excel files and putting in SQL, right? It goes kind of deep. But I say all that just to let you understand what's kind of going on under the hood, right? We're going to have some documents that we want our AI to know about. We need to put them into a database. And so we need some sort of ingestion system. Once the documents are inside the database, then we just need to add some sort of tool to call on it. And that's what you see here in the Supabase vector store, right? It's now going to be, we now just give it a tool that says, hey, go call on that database whenever I ask you a question about X, Y, or Z, right? And that's what it's going to do. And then we might even go into some re-ranker stuff as well. We probably will. We'll see how we're doing on time. But that's what we're going to be doing in a nutshell. We're going to be building an ingestion system for RAG, and then we're actually going to have our AI agent call on that RAG to answer questions. And this is super important, right? It should be kind of obvious as to why you should care about this, right? You can now essentially take ChatGPT, you can take your AI agent, you can plug it into your business, into your project, into your life, and it's going to be able to do things that aren't just limited to its training data, right? It's going to know about your documents, going to know about your project, and going to actually act as a member of your team and drive a ton of value that way. And if you're someone who wants to sell these sorts of things, almost everybody wants some sort of RAG element inside of their AI agent, right? So you really need to understand how this works and know how to implement it. And that's what we're going to do today. Okay, so here we are with our orchestrator, and we are going to be adding a RAG system to it, both the ingestion and the ability to actually answer questions based on the documents inside. Now, there's two big third-party applications that you will see people use for RAG in the context of n8n. It's going to be Supabase and Pinecone. The last example you saw Supabase, and today's we're going to do Pinecone because I think it's a little more beginner-friendly and easier to understand, but the fundamentals between the two of them remain the same. And for the ingestion system, we are going to be using Google Drive. So we are going to be putting files into a special RAG folder inside of Google Drive, which is going to go into our Pinecone database, which our AI agent will then be able to query. So that's what we're going to do today. So first things first, we are going to go to Pinecone and create an account. So you're going to go to pinecone.io. You are going to sign up. Go ahead, continue with Google or whatever you want. And you should see a page that looks like this. If you don't see it, go to the left, go to databases and go to indexes. And so we are going to create an index. So create index, call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine, we'll call mine part 5. For the configuration, we have all these different configurations. What you're going to do is you're going to do text embedding 3 small. Just click that. We're going to scroll down. You can keep it serverless. AWS is fine. For region, we'll just stick with US East 2. And then we're just going to create our index. And yeah, you should be on the starter plan, which is just the free trial or the free tier. Hit create. And just like that, we've created the bones of our vector database inside of Pinecone. Now we're going to have to actually connect it inside of n8n. So I want you to go to the left where it says API keys. Click on that. We're going to create a new API key. I'll call mine part 5. I'll call mine part 5 demo, create our key, copy it, and let's go back inside of n8n. So we're going to go ahead and just add the tool right now so we can connect our account. Search for Pinecone. You'll see Pinecone Vector Store. Select credential, create new credential, pop that key in there, hit save. We're now connected to Pinecone. Easy. Now, we'll come back here a little bit later, so you don't need to worry about this yet, but we have our account set up, which is nice. Okay, next we're going to do the ingestion system so we can actually get documents from Google Drive into Pinecone. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's search for Google Drive. And what we are going to want is we're going to want a trigger. So on the bottom left, we're going to do on changes involving a specific folder, because we're going to create a folder inside of Google Drive. That's going to be our little RAG folder. So now that we have this up, let's go inside of Google Drive. And once you're inside Google Drive, we are going to go to new on the top left. We're going to do new folder. I'm going to call mine part 5 demo. I'm going to create this. So this part 5 demo is the folder that we are going to dump all of our RAG documentation in. So we're not going to put it in yet. I'll kind of tell you why in a second, but we just wanted this to be created. So next, let's go back into n8n, a lot of back and forth today. And we just want to select that folder. So folder from list, call mine demo and part 5 demo. And what we want to watch for, we want to watch when a file is created inside of the folder, right? That's what we want. Okay, once you create your Google Drive trigger, what you're going to do is we're going to hop into our demo, our little demo folder we created for RAG. And then I want you to just put in one file at first. I don't want you to put in more than one. We're just going to drag in one, right? And once you do that, hop back into n8n, click into the trigger, and hit fetch test event. And you'll see it grab that one file we put in there. I want you to pin this data. So come up to the right, you're going to pin that. And that way we can use this for the rest of our ingestion workflow. So what happens is once the trigger occurs, we now need to download the file. So search for Google Drive, and you're going to go to download a file. Once inside here, the file you're going to download is going to be by ID, and the ID is going to be here on the left. So as you scroll down, it's going to be underneath kind, and it's going to say ID. So say kind ID, the name. So this ID, drag into there. So it should be json.id. We're then going to execute step. And you should see it populate over here on the right. You should see, it should be called data. You should see the file name, file extension, all this stuff. Cool, so now I've downloaded that file. Now you have to imagine when this is on active, it'll do it for all the things you do, right? Not just one item, it'll do it for 2, 3, 4, 5, as many documents as you put in there, but we're just testing it with one to start. Next up, we're going to add Pinecone vector store. And we're going to do add documents to vector store. So this is where we actually put it in to our vector database. So we're going to be inserting documents. Which one are we doing? We're going to do it from a list. So we're going to pick the one we created. So we're going to be inserting documents. The index is going to be the one we just created. So for me, it's called part 5. Embedding batch size, you can keep it at 200 for now. That's how many documents it can take in there max. We're just doing 1, so we're totally good. Then we're also going to do Pinecone namespace. So a namespace is, think of it as if the vector database is a house inside of Pinecone, right? The database is a house. The namespaces are different rooms. And each room, you can give them a special namespace. So you can have one for, in my example, will be meeting notes, because everything I'm putting in there today is going to be meeting notes. You could have it be called anything else you want. It just makes it a little bit easier for the AI to be able to like go through the maze that is the RAG system and the RAG database and find where your documents are. So if you ask it a question about meeting notes, it's gonna be like, oh, cool, let me go check the meeting notes namespace. So we're gonna call it meeting notes, and then we're gonna execute step. And we did not do an embedding subnode. Love that. So we're gonna come over here to the left one, embedding, click that. You're gonna go to embeddings, OpenAI, and we're gonna do text embedding 3 small, which is the same setting we had when we created Pinecone. Okay, then we need to go to document loaders. We're going to do default data loader. And then for type of data, we're going to do binary. And then we're going to do load all input data, automatically detect the MIME type, and text splitting will keep it simple. Now let's go into Pinecone vector store. And so it should be Pinecone index part 5, insert documents, 200 meeting notes. Let's execute. Okay, looks like we got some sort of error here. You might have gotten the same thing where it says vector dimension 1536 does not match the dimension of 512. That's okay. There's an easy fix for that. I think Pinecone did a recent update because it used to, I think, automatically default to the same dimensions. All that means is we had a problem here in our embeddings. So we're going to go to embeddings, and we're going to go to dimensions, and we're going to switch this to 512. So that's all that's going to happen. We're just going to match this dimensions with what it's telling us is going on inside of Pinecone. If we go into Pinecone real quick, where's Pinecone? We see right here, see where it says dimensions 512. We just have to make sure that matches with our embeddings, and it didn't match at that point. So that's okay, easy fix. Come back in here. Once you set that to 512, just go ahead and run it one more time. So there we go, it was successful. Now if we go back inside of Pinecone, this is what we should see, right? We should see records. We should now see a namespace that says meeting notes, and we should see 2 hits, right? Because it divided our document, our PDF, into 2 different chunks, right? Remember how we talked about chunking before? So this is what you should see. If you don't see it right away, just give it a second to refresh the page. But we now have a document inside of our RAG system. So now let's go back to n8n. And what we have now is we've successfully set up our ingestion system. Once we set it to active, it's going to automatically grab everything. But now what we want to do is we want to set up the actual tool. So click into here. And now we're just going to say, give it a description, probably something to do with the notes you have. So description, grab meeting note data from Pinecone database. What index do we want? We want part 5. Next, we have limit, and that's you saying, well, how many snippets of data, how many chunks do you want it to grab every time we ask it a question, right? So obviously you don't want too little, but you also don't want too much. So we'll stick with 4 for now. That'll be good. For re-rank, we'll leave that blank for now. And for options, we can actually add the namespace. So I called mine meeting notes. So if you had some sort of AI agent that you only want it dealing with a specific namespace inside of your vector database, this is where you would put it. So right now we're just only working with meeting notes. So I'm just going to put meeting notes. Then for embedding, same one as before. So we're going to do not Olama, we're going to do OpenAI. We're going to do text embedding 3 small. and then make sure those dimensions match, which for us is 512. So what I want you to do now is we just can save it. And let's just update our system prompt. Again, every time we add a new tool, we're going to add a new prompt. So we're going to say Pinecone vector store. Use this tool to query the Pinecone vector database to answer questions about meeting notes. So, ingestion system done, tool added, system prompt updated. Now what do? Now we test. Now, again, this has all been very, very basic. We've added one item. We gave it a very specific namespace. So we've really set ourselves up for success here. So what I want you to do is ask it a specific question about whatever document you gave it and see what sort of answer it gives you. Because remember, it's now looking at documents. It's not looking at its trading data or anything else. So we're going to open the chat, and let me remember see which one I put in there. I put in Q1 product launch. What's even in this document? So let's ask, what's our Q1 marketing and sales strategy? Here, what is our Q1 marketing and sales strategy? And let's see if it works on the first attempt. Boom, orchestrator hits the model. Perfect. It hit the Pinecone vector store. So we know it went inside of that vector database and actually try to find some answers. So let's pull this up. Q1 marketing sales, Chloe Davis, KPI will be unit user acquisition cost, all this sorts of stuff, even goes into action items. Now, does that match? Yep, sure looks like it. So great. First try, it totally worked. You know, didn't run into any errors whatsoever. I'm sure you didn't either. So yeah, that's RAG in action. So let's try to like beef this up a little bit. Let's now run it with all the documents, right? We're going to put all the documents in there now. So come to this Google Drive trigger, get rid of this pin. I want you to save this. I want you to set it to active. So now that trigger is just waiting. It's waiting to see if we add any documents. So we're going to come inside here. I now want you to take your other documents that you have, whether that's 10 documents, whatever, and we're going to put it in here, right? Dump them all in at once. And now what should happen as these uploads occur, if we go inside our workflow, if we go to executions, we should see here on the left, there we go, right? It running. So it noticed, hey, it just added some stuff. So we're going to be able to see if it actually grabbed all the documents that we added. And how many documents did I add? I added 3 items. And what do we see down here? 3 added them. If we go into Pinecone, I'm going to have to wait a little bit for it to update. So let's refresh this guy. Pinecone can be a little slow sometimes. But here we go. See, we see a lot more has been added. Good. So what did we just prove? We just proved that our ingestion system is working as advertised, even when it's set to active. So anytime we throw something in there, it's going to do what it needs to do. Now, it worked just fine when we did one document, right? What happens if we add more documents like we just did and more documents? What if I had 1,000 documents in there? How accurate is it going to be? Depends, right? This is a very, very simple implementation of RAG. Right? When I showed you earlier this one, obviously you can see there's a lot going on in our ingestion system, and that's to make it more accurate. We're adding metadata. We're tagging what article it's coming from. We're making sure all the chunks point back to the same document. We even link the document when we answer questions, right? That's the level we're eventually going to get to. And you can check out the videos if you want to see that in action. But what you will notice is the more documents you get, sometimes it becomes less accurate, right? And that's just a function of that chunking system. But one way we can get around that is with re-ranking. What is re-ranking? Well, we're going to click this. We're going to click re-rank results. We're going to come here to the re-ranker. We're going to click that button. We're going to do re-ranker cohere. We are going to use re-ranker cohere now. We're going to go to cohere.com. I'm going to do that right now. And you're going to sign up. You are going to need to give it some sort of billing. The amount it's going to cost you every single time you run this, it's a pay-as-you-go, is 1/5 of 1 cent. That's how much it's going to cost you. So scrounge up whatever change you have, you know, call in some favors, but you're going to need to do this. And you're going to go to dashboard. So go to dashboard.cohere.com. Should look like this. You're going to come to the left, you're going to go to API keys. create some sort of production key that you need. So I'll create a new one, call it part 5 demo, and I'll explain exactly what Cohere does in a second. But you're going to create a production key. You're going to copy it. We're going to go back into n8n. We're going to create a new credential inside of Cohere, right? Just paste the API key in. Done. Easy, easy. Now, what did we just do? I just ran you through that really fast. We added Reranker Cohere to our Pinecone system. What does that actually mean in reality? So let's go back to executions real quick. And I want you to go back to where we answered our first question, right? Remember when I asked that question about the single document we had? Should look something like this. If you click into Pinecone Vector Store, right, we can see the logs, right? And we can see what it grabbed. So we just had one document in there, right? So it grabbed the 2 chunks it had, and it was easy for it to do it. But if we had 1,000 documents in there, it would have grabbed 4 total chunks based on our limit. And it's going to grab those not at random. It's doing the best it can with what it has, but it just grabs the 4 chunks it thinks are good, and then it just goes with it. Its speed and its cost are what it prioritizes, right? It wants to be fast and it wants to be cheap. What Reranker does is we're still going to grab a certain amount of snippets. We're actually going to increase the amount that we grab, right? We'll actually increase that to like 10. Well, in this case, I only have 8 in there, so I'll increase mine to 8. But it takes those snippets, and then before just sending off an answer, it then ranks them. It ranks them based on how relevant it thinks each snippet is, each chunk is to our answer. And right, you might think, well, why doesn't RAG do that in the beginning? Well, remember what I said, it's prioritizing speed and cost, and Reranker adds a little bit of time to it and adds a little bit of cost. They're both small, but at scale, imagine these things add up. But we want to be accurate, so we're adding Reranker Cohere. So that's what we've done. So now that we have that in our pocket, once you go to Pinecone Vector Store, we're going to increase this limit. For me, it's going to be 8, so that should grab pretty much everything. And now I want you to ask it, you can even ask it the same question if you want, or whatever you want to do. Ask it some question about something. I'm going to ask, what is our Q1 strategy? Now, this one's kind of vague too, because am I asking about the Q1 meeting notes, or am I asking about Q4 meeting notes talking about the next quarter, right? So we'll see how it does with sort of this vague prompt. So it gave me some key points. Hey, back to Chloe Davis, so it has that, user feedback. But what I care about right now, this was actually a correct answer. What we care about is, let's look into here and let's kind of see what these responses look like. So once I'm in here, if I go to logs and I go to Reranker Cohere, you can kind of see what's happening here. So the input is the input are the initial snippets, the initial chunks that it grabbed, right? These are the first 8 chunks, or however many chunks it grabbed. I think it grabbed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it grabbed 8. So grab the 8 that it thinks is relevant. And then Cohere, what it does is it takes those 8 and it gives it a relevant score. So you see that right here, right? Relevant score 0.67, relevant score 0.7, right? So it grabbed the top 2 that it thought were relevant to the actual answer. And lo and behold, they're ones that actually talk about Q1 stuff, right? So I actually got 3 of them. So 0.67, 0.7, 0.7. So Reranker just allows us to take the best of what we grab, which gives us more accurate answers, which is why you should always be adding Reranker Cohere to your RAG systems. And also know that Reranker Cohere is a relatively new addition to n8n just in the last month. So if you're using it, consider yourself ahead of the curve. So we're going to save this. And this is where I'm going to leave you at the end of part 5 with us setting up vector databases, setting up RAG. Again, we did a very simple implementation. We just asked it a couple questions. But in the next lesson, we're going to tie this all together, right? We've done some content stuff. We've done some RAG stuff. Well, guess what we're going to do next? We're going to smash those together. We're going to add some documents to our RAG database that we want to create content on. So that's what I want you to think about. What would you, in reality, want to create content on, right? We'll do some LinkedIn posts again. But what do you want it to be about, right? Maybe it's something about your business, maybe about something you actually care about. Think about that. And then go add them to your database. Go add them to your RAG system, right? Start getting this up and ready to go. We'll go through it in part 6, but that's where we're headed, right? We're headed to not just knowing what RAG does in a vacuum, which is kind of what we did here. We're actually going to integrate it into the system we've been building on. So that's going to be part 6. I hope you guys like part 5. As always, let me know what you thought about it in the comments. And you can get tons of resources on my Skool if you haven't already checked that out already. And I'll see you around.